So a very warm welcome to you all. Welcome to the Buddhist Society. This is the first basic meditation class that we're doing both online and here in person in the Buddhist Society in the room adjacent to the library. And if you're logging in from other parts of the world, it's early evening here in London, and I wish you a very good day wherever you're logging in from. So this is the basic meditation class, and my name is Richard, and I co-run this class with Colin and with Ajahn Subhaddo. And this evening we're going to be here for roughly an hour and a half till roughly 8 o'clock, and we'll start in our usual way by doing a body scan. But before we begin, as we're here in this special room in the Buddhist Society, I'm going to light some candles and some incense. Now, I've just checked with everyone in the room that they're not allergic to incense, but those of you who are online, I don't think that quite applies. So let's just begin in our usual way by just sitting in a comfortable but upright posture. And I invite you all now just to get yourself really comfortable in a posture you can hold easily for around half an hour or so. The important thing is, at the same time as being comfortable, is to be upright. And there are two reasons for this. Firstly, meditation, mindfulness practice is not supposed to increase our suffering, so we need to be comfortable. It's supposed to be the way beyond suffering. So right at the very beginning, we need to make ourselves reasonably relaxed. So the posture needs to be something we can hold easily. And the important thing to mention about being upright is that this promotes alertness. And as I've mentioned before to this class, one of the things that we're doing here is we're combining two qualities of mind: the capacity to be upright and alert, both in our mind and in our body, and the capacity to be relaxed at the same time. And normally we think of relaxation as being slumped on the settee, and we normally think of alertness as being really very tightly focused or concentrated over a computer screen or a telephone. But it's important to recognize that these are qualities of mind that we can actually put together and integrate. And meditation, mindfulness, is one of the ways in which we can do this. So the posture, the basic posture of being upright and relaxed, is a really good starting place for any time we begin to sit in meditation. And so I invite you now just to check that you are both comfortable and reasonably upright, as best as you can manage, given the limitations of your body. And one must always recognize that for many of us as we get older, we're not quite so used to being in certain positions, cross-legged on the floor, for instance, as we were when we were younger. The other very good place to start with meditation is just to establish our sense of being grounded, supported by the floor. So I invite you now just to bring your attention downwards to the points of contact you have with the floor. So if you're sitting on a chair, it would be the soles of your feet resting on the floor, not crossed one over the other, but just planted firmly and solidly on the floor in front of you, providing a stable base. And if you're sitting on a cushion on the floor, then it's your ankles and your shins, perhaps your knees, just the points that are contacting the carpet or the floor. And the invitation here is quite simply to get a sense of that contact. What does it feel like? You might want to close your eyes so that you can go inside and really place your attention on the feeling connection with the floor, so that you feel supported, grounded, and you have a sense of being in contact with the floor. And if you find yourself thinking about the floor or your feet or your ankles or your shins, or imagining them, that's fine, but just notice that. You haven't made a mistake. See if you can really bring your attention to the feeling connection with the floor. Just notice what your mind does. There's the floor, there's your connection with it, there's the sensation, and there's all the other thoughts arising and coming and going. So just notice that. And then in the same way, I invite you to move your attention to your sitting bones on the chair or the cushion. And again, the invitation is to feel that contact. What does it feel like? The weight of your torso, the pressure, the touch. And just notice if your mind goes into imagining or thinking about or if other thoughts begin to come in. And all of those are perfectly natural, perfectly normal movements of the mind. You haven't made a mistake. There's no need to start beating yourself up about it or being self-critical. This is perfectly normal and natural. But just notice it and see if you can then just gently nudge your attention back to that feeling connection. What's the sense? What's the touch? How does it feel? And in the same way, I invite you to bring your attention to your back, your spine in particular. Now, if you're sitting on a chair or on a settee, just notice the contact with the back of the chair. If you're sitting unsupported, just notice what that feels like. So the invitation is the same. Just to get a sense of that area of your body. What's the feeling? You just notice what your mind does with that invitation. Where does it go? And whilst we're working with the back, there's a general invitation just to relax and slow down. Always useful in these practices. Whatever else you've been doing today, there's an invitation just to leave it aside, let it go, and to slow down. There is no rush here. There's nowhere to get to. So what's the sensation in your back, your spine in particular? And then I invite you to bring your attention to your neck and shoulder area. Just notice what tension you might be carrying there. See if you can align your neck with your spine and your spine with your pelvis. So everything's in a nice upright column. And again, just feel what's going on in that area of the body. Are you relaxed? Are you tense? Is there pressure? Are you hot or cold? And just notice what your mind does with that invitation. Where does it go? And then moving up the body again, I invite you to bring your attention to your head, back of your neck, your head, crown of your head, your face. Just feel what that feels like, resting on your neck. What does it feel like? And again, just notice if you go into thinking, if you're imagining, visualizing your head. None of those are mistakes, they're perfectly natural. But just notice what you're doing with the invitation. And then I invite you to come to the crown of your head and just lengthen a fraction towards the sky from the crown of your head so that your spine is pulled up into a nice upright column. And this promotes alertness. Mindfulness practice is largely about waking up. And if we sit upright, this promotes our alertness and helps us. So what does the crown of your head feel like? And again, I invite you just to remember the overall invitations to relax and slow down. If your mind is drifting, wandering onto this or that, just notice that. You haven't made a mistake. This is the natural movement of the mind, and we can notice it. And just return our attention to the part of the body that we're actually working with. And then I invite you from the crown of the head just to take in the whole of your physical body, from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, taking in the contact with the floor, contact with the chair or the cushion, your sitting bones, your back. Just feel the clothes on your skin surface and the air on your hands and your face. So really just taking in the whole of your physical body. What does it feel like? So just notice where your thoughts are now. Where is your attention? And just gently bring it back to the body. One of the things you may notice is how in this still body there is still movement. You're sitting here still on your cushion or your chair. Your attention is placed on the body. And we can notice that there is still movement going on. The very obvious movement is the breath. The breath comes and the breath goes. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to instruct it. And we can use that natural process as an anchor for our attention. So just for these last few moments of this first sit, I invite you just to pick up the sensation of the movement caused by the breath. So the invitation is not to alter the breath in any way. It's simply to rest your attention on the sensation of the movement caused by the breath. So where do you feel it most vividly? Where is it easiest for you to connect with the breath? The usual places are the abdomen or the chest. Some people find it easier at the rim of the nostrils. Where is it easiest for you? Where does it impact on you most vividly? So just notice what your mind does with that invitation. Where do you go? And it's fine to have a wandering mind, a busy mind, a monkey mind. There's nothing wrong with it. You haven't made a mistake. But we can notice that, and we can practice returning our attention to the sensation of the movement caused by the breath. So please feel free to relax your posture and move and stretch if you need to, and take a sip of water. And if you've just joined us, if you've just logged on, and if you've just arrived here in the Buddhist Society, I just want to recap where we've been in that first practice. Really what we've been doing there is we've been noticing and it is sometimes said that in meditation there are two basic instructions or invitations. One is to notice and the other is to let go. And really in that one, we were just working with noticing what's going on. And we were using the body and different parts of the body just to begin to appreciate what's going on right now. And of course, the most important thing to say about working with the body like this in basic mindfulness practice is that if we are placing our attention on a particular part of the body and our attention is located in that part of the body, it is not elsewhere. If we are feeling the soles of our feet on the floor, we're feeling them in the present moment. And that's a large part of mindfulness practice, is learning to inhabit, learning to occupy the present moment, learning to locate our attention in the present moment. And we use parts of the body to do this because, as I've just said, if we are feeling, we're feeling now. We're not feeling something as it was a minute ago or something as it will be in 1 minute's time. We're feeling it right now. And this is particularly true of the breath. If your attention is resting on the breath, it's on this breath. It's even more precise than that. If your attention is sensing the breath, it's sensing this particular part of the breath, the in-breath, this in-breath. Then this turning point or pause between the in and the out breath. And then this out breath. It's not in the past, it's not in the future, it's right now. That's why working with the body in this way is so useful in mindfulness practice. We're learning, we're practicing to locate our attention repeatedly in the present moment. And that's a large part of the practice. And it is a practice. One of the points I was making as we went through that was I was saying there are specific invitations to place your attention on this part of the body and that part of the body. And there's a general invitation, which is to relax. You're sitting upright, that promotes the alertness. But at the same time, a relaxed body cultivates a relaxation of the mind. And a lot of the movements that we have in our mind is caused by tension. And if we can relax our bodies, some of that tension will dissipate. And it's a practice. It doesn't happen instantly. The second part of the practice, well, I suppose you could divide it up into many ways, but it's letting go. And this, of course, is much more problematic in a way. Noticing, if you like, it's the easy bit. Oh, even that's not easy sometimes, but it's more straightforward. Now, the invitation to let go when our thoughts drift us off into the past or the future, and pretty much most of our thinking is about some aspect of the past or some aspect of the future. Now, the really important thing I want to cultivate with people that come to these classes is if you can really adopt a compassionate attitude to yourself, it helps a great deal with this practice. And so many of us have been brought up in an education system where we have learned to be very self-critical. We've come through a culture and conditioning that actually is quite self-critical. And we've learned to sort of find fault with ourselves. And many people bring that to meditation practice. So when the teacher, the facilitator says, place your attention on the breath, and you find you're thinking of your summer holidays or what you were doing 4 hours ago, and the tendency is to think, I've got it wrong, I've done something, I've made a mistake, I'm not doing this right. Everyone else in the class is sitting there perfectly in the present moment, perfectly following the breath, and I'm the only one here that can't do that. And you know how it goes, the stories we tell ourselves. But one thing I really want to cultivate and to encourage you to cultivate is just accepting that you haven't made a mistake. Our minds are busy. We do have these self-critical attitudes. And if we can begin to have a compassionate disposition towards ourselves, treating ourselves kindly, instead of beating ourselves up all the time, even in meditation, then this goes a long way to helping us let go of thoughts. And that helps us to occupy the present moment. But let's have a look a bit more closely at this process of letting go. It's easy to say. It's very easy for a teacher to sit in front of a class and say, all you've got to do is when you notice you've got thoughts of the past or the future, is just let them go. It's terribly easy to say. But in reality, we actually have so many sticky thoughts, persistent thoughts, recurring thoughts, habits of mind. It's not quite so easy as the instruction would have us, as it would seem, just when you receive the instruction. So what can we do to help us with this process? Well, I thought we'd just spend a few moments just looking at some of the processes that go on in letting go. There are a number of aspects to it. Firstly, at some level, we need to accept where we are. We need to accept that there is a persistent thought or a recurring thought or a habit of mind, or that simply we've drifted onto trivia and we actually have lost the breath or the soles of our feet or whatever part of the body we're using as an anchor. We need to accept that. So there's a recognition, just knowing, okay, I'm here and not there. And that's part of the usefulness of working with the body. It's like a reference point. Often we use the phrase, anchor your attention in the breath. Use the breath or part of the body as a place of return. So it's a reference point, and we know we've drifted by reference to that point. If you're thinking of your summer holidays, you're not with the present breath. So you know you've drifted. If we can accept that in a really compassionate way, this helps in the letting go process. What does acceptance actually mean here? Well, again, you can unpack that a bit more. It's quite complex. The opposite of acceptance would be to say, no, I wasn't really there. I was with the breath, to deny it. But if we have a compassionate attitude and we are treating ourselves kindly, and we have this understanding that this is the nature of mind. It's the nature of mind to be busy. It's the nature of mind to drift. We haven't made a mistake. This is how it is. This is how we are. We're just learning about the movements of the mind. If we can come with kindness to that recognition, that helps in actually accepting, okay, that's where we were. Nothing wrong with it. It's just the movement of the mind. So a compassionate attitude helps with acceptance. The other part of letting go that we might want to look at is just learning to be with whatever state of mind we have. Now, this is quite a difficult one because so many of us come to meditation practice, quite rightly, to have more happiness, less suffering, or any number of variations on that. If I was to ask people in this class, online or here in front of me in the Buddhist Society, why do you come to meditate? There would be as many answers as there are meditators, probably more. People may have several answers. But basically, they all boil down to two things: promoting happiness in our life and having less suffering. Well, I'd be open to any variations on that. Yeah. But that's pretty much mostly what it's about. Well, if we want more happiness, how is it then possible to sit with a really difficult, uncomfortable state of mind? So this is where the letting go, we see the difficulty sometimes about letting go. Actually, it's not quite so simple. We want to get rid of, but letting go is not getting rid of. Letting go is much more subtle than that. So if we can start to lean into whatever state of mind we have with acceptance and with compassion, then we begin to facilitate the ability internally to let it go. So there are two aspects that I'm encouraging you to really have a look at in your practice here. One is when things come up, thoughts, mind states, can you actually be with them rather than trying to push them away? And can you actually accept that you have them rather than denying or grasping after another mind state that seems better? Can you be with your present reality? These are the sorts of areas that we need to work with in meditation in order to facilitate the letting go. One of the other aspects of this process is learning to be the witness to our own process. So just witnessing what's going on inside us. So we're working with the breath, and we have difficult thoughts or a difficult mind state. And if we can just accept that that's where we are, with compassion and kindness, then we facilitate acceptance. And if we can accept with compassion and kindness that mind state, then we don't give it energy. We don't feed it. And that gives us the ability and the potential to let it go. We'll explore some more of this later, but I thought we might do a little bit more practice now, working perhaps with the breath. So I invite you now to come back to a reasonably upright and comfortable position. And again, for those of you that have just arrived, these practices are to encourage us to let go of suffering, not to increase it. So do get comfortable. And then in the same way that we did before, I invite you just to connect for a moment or two with the points of contact with the floor. So drop your attention down, perhaps close your eyes if that helps, and just connect with the sensation of your feet on the floor, or if you're sitting cross-legged on the floor, your ankles and shins on the floor. What does it feel like? And then when you're ready, without altering your breath in any way, I invite you just to pick up the movement of the breath, the sensation of the movement of the breath. What does it feel like? What does this in-breath feel like? What does this out-breath feel like? And I invite you also to bring kindness and compassion to yourself in this practice. So where is the breath occurring most vividly for you? Is it a general sense of the breath? Or are you feeling it in the abdomen or the chest area? Or at the rim of the nostrils? There's no right or wrong answer. Just where do you pick it up most easily? So just noticing where you are now. Where is your mind? Where is the breath? And just encouraging you to bring kindness and compassion to yourself as you work, as you practice. So just noticing where you are now, and where is the breath? Where is the out breath? Where is the in breath? Noticing the turning points, the pauses. And keeping kindness and compassion for our mind states and our mind movements. So again, just notice where you are. If you're getting lost, just notice that and see if you can just reconnect with part of the breath cycle, the in-breath or the out-breath, all the turning points. So again, please feel free to stretch and move and relax your posture. Have a sip of water. And when you've got comfortable, if anyone would like to ask any questions or make any comments or anything you'd like to talk about me a little more, you'd like to talk about. If you want to put anything in the chat, if you're online, you'd be very welcome to send a chat question. I'll talk about something whilst you think of what to ask. Frequently comes up, and many I teach beginners classes, primarily basic meditation. So often I get people who are in front of me who are starting meditation for the first time and very new to it. And often the question that they ask is something of the nature of, I don't think I'm cut out to be a meditator. My mind is always so busy, it's all over the place. And shouldn't I be doing some other form of practice? And that's a very frequent sort of position that people take, is that they try it once for 5 or 10 minutes and they realize that they have a busy mind and they think they're just not cut out for it, it's not for them. And what I often say to people is, whatever mind state you have, you can meditate with that. That's the basic teaching of the Buddha, one of the basic teachers. Whatever your mind state, it is possible to actually work with it. And people often look incredulous when they hear this, and they think, what, me? My mind state? And I think that's one of the things that's very difficult to get across to people, especially when they're starting out on this path of practice, is that whatever your mind state is, that's what you have to work with. And we have this wonderful, creative, imaginative human mind that's enabled us to survive all these thousands of years to get to where we are. And that's what we're working with. And it's by its very nature, it is busy, especially in the modern world. We have so much input. If you think of all the sort of the input you have into your mind during the course of an average day, there's the radio, the television, the newspapers, social media, adverts on buses, in the tube, people talking to us. It's endless, the input. We lead busy lives. The modern world is a busy place, and our minds often reflect that. But that's what we have to work with. And it's not that we have to subdue or suppress any aspect of that mind, but we can, in this mindfulness basic practice, we can begin by noticing. And that's where we began today, just about an hour ago, that basic practice of sitting with the body and just noticing what's going on, noticing how the body feels and how the mind is in relation to it. In Buddhist psychology, there are what they call the sense doors. So we have our 5 physical senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. And in the Buddhist world, we have our mind as well. These are the sense doors, 6 senses, the 5 physical ones, and our mind. And the sense doors are where we receive input from the world. We are this, as the Buddha puts it, this fathom-long body, and that's where it all happens. And we receive the outside world through the sense doors. So you have this idea that there's the outside world and there's us inside here, and we receive the outside world through the sense doors. And the moment of reception is the critical point. And as the Buddha points out, how we perceive things in the outside world is very much influenced by the state of our mind. What is it, the first line of the Dhammapada? With our minds we create this world. However actually that's a simplistic translation of it. But the first line of the Dhammapada is basically saying, however the world is, however our mind is, that's how we perceive the world. If we have ill will in our mind, we will perceive the world through that mind state. If we have a compassionate, kind mind, that's how we will perceive the world. He says, as whatever our mind state is, then that's how we think of the world. It's like an ox, the wheel of an ox, the wheel of a cart following the ox in its tracks. And so our mind state is critical, and that's what we begin to work with. Whatever it is, we can work with it. And it's a question, this is why when I'm teaching mindfulness and meditation, I really emphasize this sense of being compassionate towards ourselves. That's the starting place. If we can engage with these basic practices with a compassionate mind, a mind that is has a kind disposition to the practitioner that is working with it, that's us. Then how we perceive what enters our sense doors will be influenced by that compassionate state. And just the same as when we perceive that we have a wandering mind, instead of beating ourselves up and saying, oh, I'm no good as a meditator, I can never do this right, I'm getting it wrong, everyone else in the class has got it perfect. If we can just know that this is just how our mind is, and we can be kind to ourselves, it's okay, that's how the mind is, I can work with this. And we know it's a practice, it takes time. That's a compassionate state of mind, and we can begin to see the contents of our mind in this way, compassionately. Even if it's a difficult thought, a thought with ill will in it, an uncomfortable thought, we can receive that compassionately. I'm just a human. I'm subject to difficult mind states like everyone else, and that's okay. I don't have to act on them. I don't have to act them out. I can just know that's how my mind is sometimes. We can receive it compassionately with acceptance. In the Theravadan tradition, there's a little passage that is the 5 subjects of frequent recollection. And it goes, I am of the nature to age, I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to sicken, I have not gone beyond sickness. And there are 5 recollections, all to do with acceptance of our human state. And I often think they should add a 6th one, is, I am of the nature to have a busy mind. I have not gone beyond the busy mind. And I reckon that's really true for most of us people in the Western world, in this busy life, is we have busy minds and we can work with them.
See, I think that it's only through bringing, like for instance, difficult thoughts, as you've touched on. It's only through actually bringing awareness to those difficult thoughts that you actually can kind of see through them as being constructs, usually, of the mind. I also think on the point that you said about, you're troubled by thoughts coming all the time. And I think, for me, when you start out, that is the case. And you never get to a point where you're not going to have thoughts, because like you said, that is the mind's purpose, is to produce thoughts, concepts. But what you find is that the deeper you go into the practice, the thoughts are no longer the primary object. The primary object really does, you become totally absorbed into the breath, And what you also to touch on something else you said, that I think that when you do, through doing meditation practice, you come to a point where there is no inside or outside. The subject and the subject, and they are both reliant on each other. Without the mind to kind of manifest the outside isn't going to happen.
I'm just wondering if people online could hear that question from John. You could, yes. You're nodding. Okay, that's great. So I don't have to relay it back to you. Okay, the sound system's working well. Okay, so you got that. Yes, I would very much agree with you with all of that. Certainly, when you've worked for quite a while with the breath, this idea of inside and outside is no longer a valid distinction. I absolutely accept that. One of the points is here to make. It's a really good point you're making. And I think I could echo this to the people online, is that one of the reasons that the breath is so useful in basic practice is because actually we're taking the outside, the air, and it's coming inside, and we're noticing that whole movement, that sensation. And of course, as physical beings, we're reliant on the air to support life. So this distinction between outside and inside, absolutely. I think you're spot on there. It actually, once you're into deep practice, it breaks down, and that's a really useful point to make.
The realization is that probably one of non-duality. That's where this leads practice, I think. Personally, other people's experiences may be different.
I would certainly concur with that. Anyone else got any comments or questions?
Richard, there's a question in the chat box. Hopefully it's come through to you.
Hang on. Yeah, got it. Okay. Okay, the question is, and thank you very much for the question, but I find it particularly hard to let go of thoughts about work, partly because I think it's what I ought to be doing. Any suggestions? Yeah, that's a great question. I really appreciate the sort of the situation you're finding yourself in there. So firstly, I just want to acknowledge that this is a real issue for many people, and certainly, obviously, for you. And it's this, when the thought comes, it brings with it so much in tow. Now, one of the things that I'm picking up from the question is that there's a particular charge about work for you. And just to generalize this, when we have thoughts, yes, we can notice we're having them. That's one important part of the practice. But another useful part of practice is simply to notice the type of attachment we have to the thought. And what you're saying here is that this thought actually is a particular sticky quality to it. So we can start to notice that around work there's this ought, which in one sense is just like it's sticky. It sucks us in. It's difficult to let go of because we're really quite attached to it. And we can start to notice that too. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to let go. I'm not saying that at all. And my heart goes out to you really in this, because this is obviously a place of suffering. And my suggestion, and I don't have any quick fixes, these practices are not about quick fixes, but my suggestion to you is to bring as much compassion and kindness to yourself in this process. You've noticed you've got these thoughts about work. You can notice how sticky they are, the quality of the attachment you have, this ought that is hanging over you here. And you can notice that and bring compassion and kindness to yourself. And it's just that self-care. Yeah, I've got these thoughts about work. I have this ought, this imp about it, and it's difficult to let go. And just know that that's the place you're in, and it's a place of suffering, and it's difficult. And that's a starting place. And bring as much care and compassion as you can for your process in this. I guess that's probably the starting place. I hope that helps. And just recognizing it's a process. It really is a process. The other little thing I would add to that is it's a great temptation when we have difficult thoughts or we touch on areas that are uncomfortable. It's a great temptation to want to get rid, actually push them away, get them out of our life. And one of the important teachings in Buddhist psychology is that when we push things away, we're actually stuck to them. We're giving them energy and they stick back on us more firmly. So rather than pushing away, if you can bring compassion and acceptance to the situation you're in, that helps weaken the energy they have over you. And again, I would add that this isn't a quick fix, it's a process and a practice. Okay, thank you very much for the question. Gosh, just looking at the time. Okay, anyone else with any questions?
Could I?
Colin. Welcome, Colin.
Well, I mean, this is a minor history in the making. This is the first face-to-face and indeed hybrid class for over 2 years. I want to thank you for handling it. And really, my question is, how is it for you? I mean, I'm zooming in, like most people here. and from my point of view, frankly, it went fine. And I was particularly pleased to be able to hear loud and clear my good friend John Bedding, who is there with you. Now, can he hear me? Because I'd like to say hello to him. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear you, Colin.
Very good. Well, I'm delighted. I'm delighted to hear you're live and kicking. That's great, and that's very promising.
Yeah.
And so, Richard, do you have any thoughts on how this is going for you?
Well, it's certainly new doing a hybrid class, but I think it's worked very well. From my point of view, it's that my technical assistants, Wangdu and Odin and Lisa, have been absolutely first class, and they've set everything up really well, and I'm very grateful to them. And yeah, from my point of view, it's really worked very well. It's so long as people online can hear the people actually here in the room, I think it's a really valid way of working, and I'm delighted with it. It extends the outreach of the Buddhist Society no end. So yes, it's gone very well indeed.
That's great. That's good.
I mean, my only question would be to the people online would be, do they have a need to see the room and the people in the room as well? Or is it okay that they just see me and the shrine? That would be my only question. So long as the sound works, and I think, and they can hear it, but would they want to see people as well, to feel more part of the class? But perhaps we can get feedback from that as we go along.
Well, thanks. That's very encouraging.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining the class, Colin. I hope you enjoyed it.
Speak to you soon, Colin.
Did you hear that, Colin?
No, I didn't catch that, you see.
I said I hope to speak to you soon.
He says he hopes to speak to you soon.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Of course. And in fact, John, why don't you sit at the front of the face-to-face class sometime?
Oh, he's asking you to.
Okay. There you are. Yes.
For the look, I won't prolong the agony for those of you who haven't a clue what we're talking about. But John Bedding is just a long time member of the class. I mean, back in the day when we met live at the Buddhist Society, John was a regular there, and it's lovely from my point of view that he's even dared to tiptoe into the Buddhist Society this evening. That's absolutely great, and I'd be more than happy if he could help out with the class. And I don't see myself actually coming into London that often to do it, so I think it's great that you're doing it, Richard and John, and anybody else as well.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if some of the people online could come along as well. You know.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll happen in time.
That's good. Well, thank you very much. I'll say thanks again to Richard. Are you going to say anything, Richard? Are you going to say anything about next week and the week after?
Yes. I guess we'll be back to will it be yourself next week, Colin?
Well, not really. I'm giving my place to Her Majesty the Queen. Because
right. Oh, of course. Yes. It's
Buddhist
the
Society is closed next week.
Oh, of course. Yes. No. Thank you for reminding me, Colin. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think there won't be a class next week as it's the bank holiday for the Platinum Jubilee, and I forgot to mention that. Thank you for reminding me, Colin. That's right. The Buddhist Society will be closed on next Thursday. So we'll meet again here online and here at the Buddhist Society in 2 weeks.
That's right.
Okay, so thank you all very much for joining me this evening, both here in the Buddhist Society and online. And I wish you all a very good fortnight, and go well. Thank you.